Hello everyone, welcome to the second lecture of week 2 for the scalable data mining course. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about the Spark platform. So what is Spark? So Spark is an in-memory cluster computing platform, okay, for iterative and interactive applications. So this is the website for the Spark. So this is the description taken from the website. Okay. So the keywords here are in memory and of course cluster computing. Okay. So how does this work? Okay. So before going into the details of Spark, so it was started in AmpLab at UC Berkeley in around uh, 2012 or so the first version of Spark came out around 2012. Okay, and the key concept they introduced is the resilient distributed datasets concept. Okay. Uh, so we will discuss what resilient distributed data sets are in detail. Okay. Now this is intended for both data and computation intensive. So here the difference is that most Hadoop related platforms are they are called big data platforms. Okay, big data. So these are for data intensive computing where you have to process large amount of data. Okay, but Spark on the other hand is aims to be a little bit more flexible, and while it can do big data processing, it can also sometimes do some computation intensive processing. Okay, and we will see why this is the case. Okay. Now, as with Hadoop, so this is scalable in the sense that you can write a program without having to know how much data it has to operate on or how many servers are available, and as more data and more servers become available, the program will automatically scale itself, and it is as it scales itself, it will also be fault tolerant. That is, we know that as the number of servers increases, there is the chance of one of the servers failing becomes higher. So the uh, the program is also needed to be fault tolerant. uh, Now, this is one of the important things, that the Spark platform is totally integrated with the Scala programming language. So, what do we mean by that? We mean, so we will discuss more, but essentially, when you are writing a Spark program, you feel as, as though you are writing a Scala program, just that the Scala program is getting executed in a distributed manner, distributed, scalable, and fault tolerant manner on a cluster. Okay, and it has also the idea of straggler handling, which we saw in Hadoop using duplicate tasks. It has the idea of data locality, which is that it is able to automatically schedule the tasks on the servers where or closest to the servers where the data is available. And it has also the ease of use component, which is that you don't have to write very clumsy and big programs for distributed computing. And we have seen the background. The background is pretty similar to what Hadoop does. So basically, it is expected to. So Spark is designed to run on commodity clusters, which are basically clusters of commodity servers, and there are a variety of applications which run on this kind of clusters. So for example, in the industry, one may run a search application, either internet search or an enterprise wide search, etc., etc. One may be using machine translation, ad targeting, etc. Okay. And in research also, there is a lot of interest. For example, in big data processing, in bioinformatics, natural language processing, climate simulation, and so on and so forth. And so Hadoop has been used for all these cases. And now the theme of Spark is to provide a similarly powerful abstractions for a broader class of application as Hadoop. Okay, and we will see why. So let us see this. So this is the Hadoop MapReduce programming model. So you have input, which in this case is from HDFS. Okay, so the input of a MapReduce job, as we know, is a stable storage, and output is also a stable storage. Okay, so typically it is something like HDFS. Okay, and in between there are mapper jobs, and then there is a shuffle, and then there are reducer jobs. Okay, now this model is called the data flow model. Okay, now this data flow model is has benefits. So the benefits, as we know, are that the runtime can decide where to run the tasks. Okay, uh, and it can automatically recover from failures. Okay, so so those are the advantages of the MapReduce system. This While this acyclic data flow is a powerful abstraction, it is not efficient for many different types of applications, especially the ones that repeatedly reuse a working set of data. So you have a certain data, a working set of data in memory, okay, and you are repeatedly reusing it. Okay, so what are the common cases of this? So one very common case is machine learning, where you have iterative algorithms, right? So when you train a machine learning model using a large data, you have to iterate over the whole data set. Okay, the other probably important set of applications are these interactive data mining tools. So one may ask, from a large data set, you may run a query, and this. So for example, you may ask something like, from a data set of user interactions, that how many users are from India. Okay, and and then once you have seen the results, you may want to ask how many of those users are from Kharagpur. So this is an interactive two-level query. First, you are asking how many users are from India, and then you are asking how many users are from Kharagpur. Okay, so this kind of interactive queries are also uh, not so easily answered, because what happens in Hadoop is you have to process the entire data set for answering the first query, and then again you have to process the entire data set for answering the second query. Okay, unless you store the records of the first query in another file in the HDFS, and that is again expensive, because first of all you are duplicating data, and secondly you know that HDFS writes are expensive. Okay, Spark makes this idea of working sets a first class concept to efficiently support this app. So this is the key idea of Spark. Okay, so what are the goals of Spark? Basically, they want to provide distributed memory abstractions. Okay, so these are the working sets of data that you are talking about. So, so you can think about it as there is a data which is distributed in the memory, in the main memory, not in the hard disk, across the cluster. Okay, and your programs or applications are sort of working on this distributed memory of data. Okay, and while providing this, so this is something they want to provide. Now while providing this, they want to retain all of these advantages of the MapReduce program, which is fault tolerance, data locality, and scalability. Okay, and the way they do it is through what is called resilient distributed data sets. Okay, so this is the main idea. So another way of thinking about it is that it is a kind of a in-memory HDFS, okay, or in-memory distributed file system, okay, which is resilient. So resilient basically here means it is resilient to failure. Okay, so that is so that is the idea of resilient. So just like HDFS is resilient to node failure, RDDs are also in a sense resilient to node failure, even though they are not stored in permanent storage. So what are really RDDs? Okay, so RDDs are immutable distributed Scala collections. Okay, so we have seen various types of, so we have seen lists. There are also arrays and maps and sets. Okay, but essentially these are collections of objects in memory as defined by Scala. Okay, now what Spark does is it makes them distributed and immutable. So list is already immutable, but immutability is important because remember, HDFS files are also immutable, and the reason is that immutability allows you for the data flow model or the acyclic data flow model, which is that the data moves from one stable storage to another stable storage. The original file in the HDFS is not altered. Okay, so that is important because you may want to recompute down the line certain portions of the data, as some of the computations may have failed. So the second important aspect is what is called transformations. Okay, so we remember that in Scala there were these higher level functions. Okay, higher level functions which would take like the map function or the filter function, which would take these Scala collection objects, something like a list, and then apply other functions which are input to this function to every element in this list. Now, and after applying, uh, there will be two different types of higher level functions, okay, in Scala. So one that would create new lists or new collection objects, and the other that would create values, okay, or they would return, instead of returning lists, they would just return values. So something like let's say uh, so map or filter or join or reduce by key, these would create new collections, and something like reduce or collect or count or take, uh, these will create just values out of the lists. Okay, So for example, count will just count the number of elements in the list. Okay. Uh, in Spark, uh, the first so the first class of operations are called transformations. So these work on RDDs and create new RDDs. Okay. So this is the first class. The second class of actions are operations are called actions. Okay, and these are handled separately in Spark. They need not be handled separately in Scala, but these are handled separately in Spark. Okay, and so they basically take as input RDDs, or they operate on RDDs and return values which are local Scala variables. Okay, so remember that while your entire Spark program is operating within a Scala program, your RDDs are actually distributed objects. So they are, connecting to a distributed Spark server or a Spark cluster, and then it's creating a distributed in-memory data set. Okay, and we have discussed this, so we will see it more. So it is seamlessly, so the Spark programs are seamlessly integrated into a Scala program. So it feels as though you are writing a Scala program. Okay. Now, another important thing about RDDs are that these are lazily materialized, or these are materialized when needed. So what does this mean? This means that when you write a program, okay, Spark platform, or the Spark runtime rather, okay, the Spark cluster uh, only first creates what is called, you can think what is called a lineage graph. So you can think of it as sort of a way to compute each of the RDDs based on the transformation. So no computation is done initially. Okay, uh, these are done only when the computation is needed to be done, and this will be really helpful because as you can understand that it will be wasteful if some intermediate RDDs are created, and then one has to ensure fault tolerance. So when some intermediate RDDs are created, but these are not stored in stable storage. Now, and as we shall see, the partitions are also not duplicated by normally not duplicated. So in that case, if one of the nodes goes down, that portion of the data goes down, and then one has to again recompute. Okay, so that is wasteful. Okay, it is better if uh, the entire computation is done in using one plan, which we will see how it works. Moreover, now we said that these RDDs are in-memory datasets, but the total amount of memory available in the cluster, the RAM memory, may be much lower than what is needed to run a particular program. Okay, so if that is the case, okay, RDDs can also be cached to disk. Okay, of course, caching writing to disk degrades the performance, but the degradation is graceful. That is, uh, they will be written to disk as and when required. Okay, so you can process a much larger number of records than your memory would allow, but at the cost of a little bit more time. Okay, the fault tolerance is ensured by Spark by recomputing lost splits, okay, or lost partitions, sometimes also called partitions of RDDs. So remember that RDDs are actually distributed objects, and different partitions of this distributed data set reside on different servers. Okay, so it can compute. So not entire RDDs are not lost. Okay, when a particular server goes down, only one partition is lost, and it can recompute that particular partition. Okay, so in more detail, so we have already discussed this RDD. So an RDD is an immutable partition and logical connection or a collection of records. Okay, uh, so this is important. So from the program point of view, it is just one object. However, in actuality, it is a set of many partition objects. Okay, so these partitions are handled automatically by the Spark runtime. Okay, and need not be materialized, but rather contains the information to rebuild a data set from stable storage. Okay, so the starting RDD for a given program may be read from the HDFS, and then there may be many different RDDs. Okay, uh, now at any point in time, the lineage graph, which is built by the Spark runtime, actually stores the information to rebuild every partition of every RDD starting from the original RDD, which is the stable storage. Okay. Uh, so partitioning can be based on a key in each record, or using some kind of so one can use either a hash partitioner or a range partitioner. So you have both keyed and non-keyed RDD. So if it is a non-keyed RDD, then there is a default ID of a record, and that ID is can be partitioned using some kind of range partitioning. So most RDDs are built using what are called these bulk transformations on other RDDs. Okay, so we will discuss we have discussed a little bit what these transformations are, but mostly RDDs are built using transformations on other RDDs, and these can also be cached for future reuse. So we will see this feature. Okay, so what are some of the RDD operations? Okay, so map is one RDD operation. So basically, if you call a map operation on an existing RDD, it will define a new RDD by running the function on every record of the RDD. Okay, so this is an important operation. Filter, similar to the Scala filter, again it creates a new RDD. However, it runs only the filter operation. So it takes again a function which operates on every record of the RDD and then produces a Boolean value. And based on this Boolean value, uh, uh, oh, 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 the record may either be present in the new RDD or may not be present in the new RDD. Okay. Sample is another operation which sometimes randomly samples records from existing RDDs to create a new RDD. Union is another operation. It takes two RDDs as input and creates an RDD which has uh, all the records of both the RDDs. Okay, so this is the union operation. Now, group by key and reduce by key, these are again two very important operations on RDDs. Uh, so these are something like so group by key is something like the shuffle operation in MapReduce, where uh, you take an RDD, okay, which is a key value RDD, so it has a key and a value. So every record is of the form key comma value, and then it groups all the records with the same key together. So it creates an RDD of the format where you have key comma list of values. Okay, uh, list of values. Okay, so this is something like, if you remember, the reduce function in Hadoop. Okay, uh, reduce by key is similar to group by key, except that it takes as input another function. Okay, and then that function operates on this list of values in a associative fashion. Okay, so if your list of values, so if your list of values is something like, let's say v1 comma v2 comma vn, the function first operates on v1 and v2 and maybe produces like v dashed or something, and then it operates on v dashed and v3 to produce v double dashed, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it operates on v double dashed and v4, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is how it works. This is similar to the reduce operation in the uh, so this is similar to the reduce operation in Scala, yeah. Okay, okay. Another important function is a transformation, is the join transformation, which again takes two RDDs as input, again two key value RDDs, and then produces an RDD whose records, so where basically it is like a join operation in database, so join of two tables where the records of the for key comma value 1 comma value 2, and then there's the cache operation which creates a cached RDD. So we will come to this. Now on the action side, uh, reduce is an action which works like reduce by key, except that the reduce operation is performed on all values of all records. Okay, so that is why this operation creates a value, not another RDD. Okay, so system wise, the idea is that this basically returns a value to the driver Scala program. Okay, so sometimes the main Scala program is called the driver program, which is similar to the master program in Hadoop. Okay, then there is the collect operation, which basically gets the entire RDD into the local disk. So as a result of some computation, one may have produced a smaller RDD, which one now wants to process through, in just single node using a Scala program. So collect can get an RDD into a local variable. We have already seen count. Save again saves an RDD onto the stable storage. Okay. Uh, Lookup key is, as the result suggests, it returns records with a particular key. Okay. So how does RDD ensure fault tolerance? Okay. So the way they ensure fault tolerance is that they maintain a lineage information which can be used to reconstruct lost partitions. Okay. Uh, so in order to understand this, consider this program. So this is a Spark program uh, which is which is creating an RDD called cached messages. Okay, so as you can see in the program, the RDD is looking like a Scala object, which it is. It's a Scala object, but from the runtime point of view, it is a distributed Scala object. Okay, so it's a yeah, it's a distributed Scala object. Okay, so this text file method is a method which is given in the Spark, which basically reads a file from HDFS and creates an RDD out of it. Okay, so if I say something like val a is equal to sc is something like Spark context, and then I say text file, and I can give a path. Okay, it will create an RDD which contains the records or the lines of this text file into this RDD called A. Okay, so this is what is happening here. So this text file method is creating an RDD. Okay, so let us call this RDD the HDFS RDD. Okay, so these are all derived RDD type. These are all RDDs derived from the original base RDD. So for example, this one, let us call it the HDFS RDD. Okay, now on this RDD, let's say so let's say every record in this RDD is a string. Okay, now this is like a Scala function, right? So this is a Scala function where underscore is the input argument, and then this contains is nothing but the let's say the Java contains method, which checks whether a particular string has uh, another string as a substring or not. Okay, so this underscore is the variable which is giving an input string, which is a record in the HDFS RDD. Okay, and it is checking whether the string error is present in this string. If yes, it is returning true, otherwise it is returning false. So after the filter, the RDD contains all those strings, or rather all those records which have uh, error in them. Okay, and this is stored in this filtered RDD. Okay, and then uh, we further to that RDD we further apply the map method. Okay, and let's say we split on the tab character and take the second part. So suppose your original file was of this form error, and then there was a \t, and then there was the error message. So now you have this mapped RDD at the end of this map operation, which basically contains only the error message. Okay, and then we call the cache operation, which creates the cached RDD. So we will see how the cached RDD helps, but essentially at the end of it you have an RDD which is the cached RDD. Now notice that up till now nothing happens. Okay, so up till now what is formed is this lineage graph. Okay, so the Spark's runtime system knows that it has to first create an HDFS RDD, then it has to create a filtered RDD, then it has to create a mapped RDD, and then it has to create a cached RDD. It knows all the operations that it has to perform because it has stored those. Okay, but it has not created any of the partitions of any of these RDDs. It has just stored this particular information, and this information is called the lineage graph. Okay, so what are the benefits of this RDD model? Okay, so the first thing to notice is that if it is so one has to ensure consistency in the presence of fault tolerance. Okay, so what do we mean by consistency here? Okay, so consistency means that suppose you are computing many chains of RDDs in parallel, Okay, so each of these RDD is borrowing from the original RDD. Okay, uh, okay, and now suppose it so happens that one of these RDDs fail. Okay, now all this computation has to be redone. Okay, so if this fails, one doesn't know that, you know, how much of it has failed, so this computation has to be redone, and which means this RDD's computation has to be redone. Okay, and all those things. Okay, so this basically means that while computation from this RDD to this RDD is being redone, there may be a consistency problem with the data in this particular partition. Okay, because because the data is being kind of overwritten. If it was a mutable thing, okay, so if it was a mutable thing, uh, then the data will be overwritten, and maybe already this portion of the computation has been performed. So, so one doesn't know whether to actually reperform this computation or not. Okay, so this is the problem. Okay, so that is the reason why immutability helps. Okay, so immutability ensures that you always have consistency. That is, there. So RDDs are only written once. So they're like HDFS. So they are only written once, and then there after that they are only read. Okay. Okay. So the second thing is fault tolerance in the RDD model is very inexpensive. Okay. Uh, so to understand this, note that uh, the other option or the other design option for RDDs would have been that instead of could have been something like what is called what is done in the HDFS, that each partition of the data will be either duplicated. Okay, that is, you will create, let's say, 3 copies of this data on 3 different servers and use one of them for computation. Okay, this is one possibility. Or another possibility is that you will do checkpointing, which is that you will write once one partition of the RDD is materialized. Okay, you will write it onto a HDFS. However, this lazy computation allows you that none of this is needed. Okay, so this makes, so this allows you to achieve fault tolerance. At the same time, it is inexpensive in the sense that there is neither a data replication nor a data checkpointing onto a distributed file system like HDFS, both of which are very expensive operations. Okay? So, and of course, just following the same model as Hadoop MapReduce, okay, the scheduler can perform locality-aware scheduling of tasks on partitions. Okay, so tasks which require a particular data will be scheduled in that partition. Okay, we will with on the server where uh, the partition is present. We will see how this operates. And as we shall see, model of programming is somewhat more general than MapReduce and can be, you can already understand that, and can be used for a broad variety of applications. Okay, and this is kind of the Spark execution architecture. So you have a driver program, okay, which is the which is a Scala program. Okay, it is similar to the master uh, uh, on a Hadoop execution system. So in fact, that is how Scala program executes. It executes on a Hadoop job scheduler. Okay, uh, and of course this master talks to a cluster manager. Okay, so in this case it is the same cluster manager as Hadoop, okay, which is the Yarn cluster manager. And then the cluster manager basically spawns these workers. Okay, so these are called Spark worker nodes. Okay, and these worker nodes have executors which execute the different Spark tasks. Okay, and there may be a cache for RDDs which are cached. Okay, so so broadly, this is the idea that each worker node may have multiple executors, and there may be multiple tasks scheduled on each execute. Okay, now let us go into Spark programming. So how to write programs in Spark? So the first program obviously is our word count program, which we have already seen. Okay, and this is the actual program. So RDDs, as we know, since they are immutable, so it makes sense to define them as val. Okay, uh, and then this is an RDD, so lines RDD, which basically, and so uh, every Spark cluster, okay, provides an object called Spark context. Okay, so this is how basically a master program interacts with the Spark cluster. And this so one of the ways of interacting with the Spark cluster is to actually read from the HDFS. Okay, so in this case, this text file method is sort of, it's a method of the Spark context. So this is one of the methods by which you can create new RDDs which are not created from other RDDs, okay, but they are created directly by the Spark cluster from a HDFS file. Okay, our HDFS file now has, of course, the text, and this lines RDD is basically storing each line of text in the text file. Now we are constructing this counts RDD. So the counts RDD will save the uh, counts for each of the words. And the way this program does is it takes this lines RDD. So in the lines RDD, remember each record is a line of the original text file. Okay. Now this flat map method here actually takes each record, okay, and it splits uh, the record using a space character. So in this case it is just backslash s. So backslash is to escape the first backslash. Okay, uh, and then then it creates, so it basically creates, so this split method is just a Java function on strings. Okay, so this creates a list of words. Okay, this creates a list of words. So this flat map function actually takes a list and creates RDD records out of this list. Okay, so this is the difference between flat map and map. So map takes a record and creates other records out of this record. Okay, it takes a function, so whatever the function outputs, it will create that record. Okay, uh, so the input function to a flat map takes a records and outputs a list. Okay, so basically what the flat map function does is takes this list and creates records out of this list. So now at the end of this flat map, you have an RDD which is uh, an RDD of all the words. Okay, and the words are the key. Okay, we use this reduce by key operation. Okay, so what does reduce by key do? Reduce by key takes a function, okay, which takes two records as an input. So it takes record 1 and record 2 as inputs, as we have mentioned already. Okay, and it creates another record as output. However, now here, so the value here, you can think of it as 1. Okay, so this flat map needs to be modified. So the flat map should actually output a value of 1. So it should output the record along with a 1 appended. Okay, so the reduce by key just adds those numbers. Okay, so if there are uh, 10 records with the same word, this reduce by key will just keep adding those 10 ones one after the other in an associative manner. Okay, as we described. And then that is how the counts RDD at the end of it has the word, comma, count. Okay, where word is the key and count is the value. Okay, and then the save function. So this is important. Okay, the important thing here is the save. So remember that save is not a transformation. So save is not creating another RDD, rather it is an action. Okay, so save actually writes an RDD onto the HDFS. Okay, uh, and actually all the materialization right from here gets triggered when an action is called. So this is an important thing to understand, that any RDD materialization in Spark starts with an action. Okay, so at this point in time, all the computation that has been defined till now starts to execute. Okay, now let us see how MapReduce data flow can be expressed using RDD transformations. So, so as you might have guessed, okay, so let data be the RDD. Okay, uh, one way to execute uh, a MapReduce job verbatim in the Spark programming model will be so in MapReduce job you have the mapper function, okay, and you have the reducer function. Okay, so the mapper function takes a record as input and produces one or more records, or a list of records, sorry, zero or more records, which is a list of records as output. Okay, so one has to pass the output of the mapper function, or one has to pass the mapper function to the flat map function here, which is somewhat similar to the map operation in Hadoop. Okay, now this should be followed by a group by key operation, which we have discussed works like a shuffle. Okay, this should be followed. So the group by key operation will actually give you a key and a list of values, which can then be passed to the reduce function to produce the output. Uh, so in this case, for each record of the group by key operation, okay, there is only one record that is output. Okay, so that record is computed by using the reduce function in the MapReduce. Okay, so this particular Spark program simulates the MapReduce operation. Okay, now you can also simulate this if you have a combiner function. So instead of using a group by key here, you can use a reduce by key, which will basically perform the same thing, but it will also combine the records uh, to form one record instead of key comma value list of values, the reducer will get key comma value. Okay, so basically this is just to show that MapReduce framework is really a, uh, a subset of the Spark framework in terms of expressing the programming. Okay, now let us look at another application, which is the matrix multiplication application. Okay, so how do we input the matrix? Okay, so there are many ways of, again, as one can think, there are many ways of designing the applications. So one way of inputting uh, the matrices is that you have one RDD where, so the input is one RDD. Okay, so input is, let's say, matrix RDD. Okay, and the records of this RDD are matrix ID, row index, column index, and value. So if matrix ID is 1, then the row index and the column index specify the I and the j value, and then the value specifies the aij. Okay, whereas if matrix ID is 2, it is just specifying bij. So suppose you want to compute C is equal to A times B. Okay, and also suppose your matrix dimensions are m times k and k times n. So your result output should be m times n. Okay, now how do you do this? Okay, so first, for each record you check, so you run like a flat map operation here. So you run a flat map operation for each record. If the record is from the matrix 1, that is matrix ID is 1, you emit n records. Okay, and what are these n records? So these n records should have the key of this form. So the key should be row index, comma I, where I is equal to 1 to n. Okay, and then in the value you have the column index and the value. Okay, so basically you make n copies of each row in for the matrix 1. So for each column of the second matrix, you make one copy of each row of matrix 1. Okay, so this is what it is doing. Okay, otherwise you emit m records, okay, of this form. So here the row index is now I, where I is 1 to m. Okay, and the column index is the column index, and in the value you now provide the row index and the value. Okay, So again, you make m copies of each column, okay, of the second matrix. Okay, and now note that the way we have designed the key, okay, each each row comma column of the resultant matrix C has the corresponding row of the A matrix and the corresponding column of the B matrix. Okay. Now the task is to multiply these rows and columns. Okay. So how does one do that? So first of all, one has to perform a group by key operation here. Okay. So that there are m time n groups, because we have that many different keys, because there is one key corresponding to each row index and each of the m row indices of the first matrix and each of the n column indices of the second matrix. Okay, so there are m times n groups. Now each group has uh, exactly 2k records. Now why is this? The reason is that, you see, the number of records here are column index comma value, and column index for the first matrix is basically k many of them, and similarly the row indices of the second matrix are k many of them. So there is a one-to-one correspondence between the columns of the first matrix and the rows of the second matrix, and those are precisely the records, two of them in each group. Okay, so now one has to, so in the so after you have done the group by key, you have to again, for each group, you have to run, so this can be again used, so one can use map operation here. Okay, uh, so for each record of this form I comma value, okay, these are the values of these records. Okay, uh, find another record j comma value such that I is equal to j. So we know that there is a one-to-one correspondence between the column index and the row index, and we know there are only two records with the same value of row index from the first matrix and the same value of the column index with the second matrix. Okay, so you just need to find those records in the same group, and then you need to multiply the corresponding values and add to a sum. Okay, at the end of it, you have, for each of these uh, m cross n groups, okay, uh, so the key is basically I comma j, and your value will be sum. Okay, so so this is one of the ways of performing matrix multiplication in Spark. Okay, let us look at another example. Okay, and this is the example of computing or training a logistic regression model. Okay, using Spark. Okay, so so what is logistic regression? So most of you may be knowing what is logistic regression. So it is a machine learning model for binary classification. Okay, so it has the output of the model is labels. Okay, so there are also multi-class logistic regression models, but for simplicity we are using binary logistic regression, and basically the labels are either +1 or -1. Okay, and probability of y, so x is the feature, okay, and w is the parameter vector, and probability of y given x and w is given by this formula, this is the sigmoid function of this. So sigmoid function of W transpose X. Okay. Uh, so so and then if uh, if you are given a data set xi yi of training data points, okay, uh, you can easily see, you can just check, perform the computation and see that you can so you can write the log likelihood function of the logistic regression, which needs to be minimized as uh, as the first term here, and the second term is basically a regularizer. Okay, so just we have to take the log of this, and uh, we have to take assume that the data points are independent, so the probability of the data set will be the product of the probabilities of the data set, and basically you get the sum. Okay, uh, and you have to minimize this because actually it turns out to be negative sum of that. So maximizing the log likelihood is like minimizing this loss function. Okay, so this is the function that you have to optimize, and the way you optimize is basically you compute the gradient. Okay, now notice, so this is the formula for the gradient. Again, I will not explain. So you can just check the calculation yourself. You will see that this is indeed the formula for the gradient, where again sigma is the sigmoid function, which we have seen already. Okay, and uh, and so the key thing to note here is that uh, both your gradient, your loss, and your gradient are sum over the data set. Okay, and now and then you can compute the gradient update like this. Okay, so now consider the situation that you have to do this training in a distributed manner. So you have one parameter vector W. Okay, and you have many training data points, so x1 y1 till xn yn, and many of these are in different computers. Okay, so many of these are in different computers. Okay, so now how do you do this? Okay, so uh, so the idea is that your training data xiyi is there in a HDFS file. Okay, so you create an RDDX which has both. So the records of this RDD are basically your XI and YI. Okay, and these are partitioned across. So these were stored in an HDFS file because it's a large data set, and these are now stored across the cluster in different partitions of the RDD. Okay. However, your W is just one vector which is of the size the number of features. Okay, so this one vector can be stored as a local variable, and that to a mutable variable. So we are calling it a var. Okay, so and we are initializing it to 0. Okay, uh, now the idea is that so the idea of this program is that you have to create an RDD G, which, or rather here you have to create a gradient vector. So you have to create a gradient, which remember is the gradient. So this is the gradient, okay, and this is a sum over all the data points, okay. So this is of the same dimension as W, okay. So one has to create this gradient. So the gradient is not an RDD, but your data X and Y is RDD, okay. So what do? So you run a map operation on each element, each record of the RDDX, okay, and you have this grad function which takes as input W. So the current W has to be taken as input, because remember the formula for the gradient takes W as an input, and this is the formula for the gradient, okay. uh, but here this grad function is just the function inside this summation, okay. So this is just operating on one data point A, okay, and at the end of it, it is creating an RDD of gradient vectors, or one corresponding to each training data point, okay. And then finally we are calling the reduce function, which is taking each of these gradient vectors and adding them, okay. And then you can have a line search method which just computes the step length. In case of if you are using something like a stochastic gradient descent, you don't even need to compute the step length. You can just use uh, a predefined step length. Actually, even with gradient descent, you can use predefined step length. And then, so both these calculations are on the driver, because your W and your gradient, actually the line search is not, because the line search in this case takes the RDD. Uh, but one can also ignore the line search, but this computation does not need the original data points, okay. It just computes the updates to the gradient, updates to W using the gradient, okay. And you sort of keep doing this iteration until the norm of the gradient is, let's say, very close to 0, okay. So this is a Spark implementation for the logistic regression training program, which basically can work on a large file. So what do you have to provide? You have to provide the gradient function, which is very easy to provide, and uh, either the line search function, or this line search function can also be replaced with a step length calculation function. So step size function, okay. So this step size can be chosen in a scheduled manner also. So this is pretty easy to implement. So these are some results of some experiments which were done. So as you can see, so this liblinear C++ is like a very fast C++ solver for logistic regression, and but this only works on single core, okay. But when we write Spark program with multiple cores, okay, so as you can see, as our Spark program starts to use 4 cores, it is already faster than the C++ implementation, and so on and so forth, okay. uh, and then you can just scale it indefinitely. So that was with cores, and now if we scale on a cluster, let's say we scaled it on a cluster having 1,000 nodes. So here nodes are basically tasks. So basically maybe it has uh, 5 nodes, each having 6 cores. Okay, so which basically makes it 30 nodes, and it operates much faster. Okay, uh,